1863, one of the world's greatest engineers and innovators was born. On a farm in Dearborn, Michigan, a young boy would spend his afternoons working in the shed behind his barn. By taking apart a pocket watch and putting it back together again, this boy found a love for mechanics. From this day forward, he practiced his craft and began to create some truly impressive automobiles. Little could anyone predict that this young boy, Henry Ford, would one day grow up to become a pioneer in auto assembly. Ford was unlike anyone else in his industry, and he is responsible for making cars accessible enough for middle-class Americans. He created the assembly line and is responsible for the founder of mass production. His car, the Model T, would become the most successful car of all time. His life was full of many twists and turns, but his overwhelming success is what we remember him for today. This is the story of how a farm boy grew up to become the biggest name in the automobile industry. Henry Ford was the son of William and Mary Ford, who were farmers from Michigan. Ford was the first surviving child of the couple, and they were overjoyed when he was born happy and healthy. Life on the farm was prosperous for the Ford family. His father was an Irish immigrant, and he had worked hard to provide a plentiful life for his family. Ford grew up with his 4 younger siblings on the farm, where they spent their days helping the family business succeed. The children went to school in a one-room schoolhouse, and Ford only attended school until the 8th grade. He would never receive a high school education. It was around the age when he stopped going to school that his father gifted him a pocket watch. Ford was fascinated by the mechanics behind it, and he would take it apart and put it back together for fun. People started to take notice of him doing this, and he became known as a watch repairman for his family and friends. Life for Ford was simple. He would repair watches, work on the farm, and walk 4 miles to his closest Episcopal church on Sundays. This all changed when his mother tragically died in 1876. It was at this moment that Ford realized he didn't want to take over the farm as his father expected him to. He was devastated by the loss of his mother and knew he had to go out into the world to do something amazing to make her proud. In 1879, Ford left Dearborn and moved to Detroit to start working as an apprentice to a mechanic. He became good at repairs and started operating on Westinghouse portable steam engines. Ford had had a fascination for engines since he was 12, and he watched men operate on a Nichols and Shepard road engine. This was the first vehicle the boy had ever seen, and he was entranced. This fascination never left him, and in 1887, he built a 4-cycle model on his own. It was at this moment that Ford knew he was hooked. Big things were happening for Henry Ford. In 1888, he married his wife, Clara Jane Bryant, and in the following year, he accepted a job as an engineer for the Edison Illuminating Company. He worked hard and was given a promotion. It was here that he was able to spend more time researching gasoline engines. In 1896, he made his first self-propelled vehicle, the Ford Quadricycle. This only reassured Ford that he could achieve great things in this industry. After completing his quadricycle, Ford had the opportunity to meet the esteemed inventor, Thomas Edison. Edison believed in Ford and encouraged him to continue creating. It was then that Ford decided to leave the Edison Illuminating Company and create the Detroit Automobile Company. While the vision was there, Ford was not able to make cars at the high quality and low price that he wanted, so the company fell apart and was closed. Feeling defeated by this failure, Ford looked to car racing as a new outlet. He built a 26-horsepower automobile, and the car was a huge success. This gave investors the push they needed to believe in Ford and invest in his future. In 1901, the Henry Ford Company was created, and Ford became chief engineer. Things at the company turned out to be precarious. Just a year after its conception, Ford left the company after Henry M. Leland was brought on as a consultant, a decision Ford disagreed with. In Ford's absence, the company was renamed the Cadillac Automobile Company. While away from the company, Ford continued to prosper in the racing world. He created the 80-plus horsepower race car 999, which was very victorious. He once again created a new automobile company, this time in partnership with Alexander Y. Malcolmson, a coal dealer. Problems arose when sales were slower than Ford expected, and his investors, the Dodge brothers, were unhappy. His partner Malcolmson was able to save the company by bringing in more investors. They decided to incorporate as the Ford Motor Company. Ford's talent was undeniable, but because his personality was so volatile, John S. Gray, Malcolmson's uncle, became president of Ford Motor Company. In the racing world, Ford was continuing to become more accomplished. His 999 model had just broken a speed record, and in honor of the achievement, the race car driver Barney Oldfield took Ford's car out on a national press tour. Because of this tour, the Ford name and brand became popular in the United States. In 1908, Ford's greatest achievement debuted. The Model T was unlike any car the world had ever seen. It was the first to have a steering wheel on the left. It had an enclosed engine and transmission, and the car was easy to drive and convenient to repair. Most importantly, the car cost only $825, something that was unheard of. Ford's quality car was so inexpensive that during the 1920s, people were practically forced to sell their cars and learn how to drive the Model T. Ford had implemented a unique press strategy to promote his new car. He wanted to make the Model T seem desirable for all middle-class Americans, including farmers and countrymen. In every paper across the country, you would find an advertisement for the Ford Model T. In 1913, Ford changed the industry forever when he introduced the assembly line to his factories. This assembly line made building cars way more efficient than before. A Model T was able to be made every 24 seconds. All of his cars were painted black because of the quicker drying time. With this enormous increase in production, Ford was able to lower the price of the Model T to $360. This established the car as the most famous vehicle of all time. Only 5 years after the creation of the assembly line, Ford's Model T made up over half of all cars in America. Once he hit this achievement, he handed the presidency of the company to his only son, Edsel Ford. He kept a close eye on his son and even reversed some of Edsel's decisions when he saw fit. Ford wanted to keep the business in the family, so he created a scheme to accomplish this. To do so, Ford started another company, Henry Ford & Son, and took all of his best employees with him to the new company. He wanted to scare investors into selling their stock of the Ford Motor Company. The plan worked, and Ford was able to buy up all remaining stock. He and his son became the sole owners of their company. In 1927, Ford moved the factory to Dearborn, Michigan. The father-son duo decided to cease production of the Model T and create the Model A. The Model A was innovative, but it did not sell as well as they wanted it to. Companies like Chevrolet and Chrysler were outselling for the first time since the Model T. Things were also rocky on his factory floor because his employees were attempting to unionize, something Ford disagreed with. He eventually agreed to a union, but not without a fight. At this point, Ford had become a celebrity. He became widely criticized for his controversial political views, which included some anti-Semitic remarks. He also made a failed attempt at joining the U.S. Senate. In 1943, his son Edsel died, and Ford had to return as president of the company. He had been working for such a long time and was getting old. He decided to give the presidency to his grandson, Henry Ford II. Just 2 days after this decision, Henry Ford passed away at 83 years old. Henry Ford was the son of a farmer who became the most famous name in the automobile industry. What he accomplished was unheard of, and it is impossible to think of cars today without thinking of Ford. In a way, he invented the industry we know today, and centuries later, the Ford brand still remains very successful. Ford had a vision for a car that would be made for all Americans, and he succeeded in doing this. The Model T and its cutting-edge assembly line changed the industry forever and made cars accessible for middle-class Americans.